but I think we're barking up the completely wrong tree. It's not the young ones we need to get fishing, it's the adults that we need to get fishing.
So just so the guys and girls can take something away from this little chapter, I'm going to call it a chapter, what is the one thing that you've used that has genuinely made a difference to your fishing?
I've had my licence checked. I think up until about 3 years ago, I'd had it checked 5 times in my life.
Let's do it, eh?
Why not? Welcome to episode 2 of the Mixing Bowl. I'm Mick Vials, and again I'm joined by Joe Carass.
Good morning, everyone.
The conversationalist extraordinaire. So Joe, second one.
I'll tell you what, how good was the response on the first one?
Incredible, blown me away.
Really impressed with that, really pleased. It's great to see so many of you enjoyed it, which is...
For two blokes chatting in a pub about a thing they love, the response has been amazing. We've had lots of comments and lots of positive feedback, and also thank you everybody for all the extra subscribers we've gained from our first episode of the Mixing Bowl. The response for that's been amazing, and that does help us to see that, you know, we're doing and saying the right things, and people are interested in what we're talking about. The subject matter's great, because obviously you vote with your feet, and so yeah, thanks for that, it's much appreciated.
Yeah, just a quick one, obviously we've got it on YouTube, it is on Spotify as well if you search for the Mixing Bowl. I am working on getting it on Apple and stuff, but just bear with me on that. But it is on Spotify, which is free, so you can go and watch it or listen to it on there, you can do both, and then YouTube, so yeah.
Brilliant. So we're all
modern world,
we're rocking and rolling, aren't we? And we've had some comments. We've had a lot of comments.
Loads of comments.
Subjects about what people love and what they hate. And obviously I said things that displeased me about angling, and I think people have shared their passion or hatred or opinion, haven't they? What's been a big one?
What's been a big one?
I tell you what, one I've clocked. People are very vocal about, and I saw this on somebody else's, overshotting. That's a big topic of conversation in fishing.
It is a big topic. Well, go on then, tell me. Because obviously I've done quite a bit of overshotting. Not loads, but I've done quite a bit. And it is very effective at catching fish in it. Someone say unbeatable on the right day.
Well, I'm concerned about people's downright simple attitude. It wants banning. That's all I keep saying.
Yeah.
This is my response.
Yeah.
If you're going to ban overshotting, you better ban method feeder fishing and ledgering in general, aren't you?
So please,
ledgering. For the younger viewers, ledgering, that means fishing on the bottom with some weight. Ordinary lead, you might use a feeder, method feeder. If you ban overshotting, you ban that. So if you're not banning that, and you don't want that banned, you don't want method feeder fishing or bomb fishing banning, don't talk about it. That's me, I'm done. That's the end of that subject.
It's so true, because when we were discussing before, we were like, what should we talk about? And you mentioned, obviously, you had a little chuckle to yourself in the van about overshotting. And then I was thinking about method feeder fishing, and I'm thinking, well, surely, because you chuck that out, and don't get me wrong, there's loads to it, and you chuck it out and your method's on the bottom and you get a bite that pulls itself on, and it's great, isn't it? We love it. And yet overshotting just seems like such a taboo.
I'm done, I've said my bit.
Yeah.
Forget it.
What do you think?
Crack on, tell us what you do think, if you're in favour of it, if you're not in favour of it.
I'll tell you what they loved.
Oh, they absolutely loved it. I mean, Look, I've got a brew, I've poured in water in that.
Dribble off.
I did expect a Leeds Cup today, but he knows I'm not a football fan, and I don't think he would have actually put a Leeds Cup in his van. But please don't let his cup put you off viewing our video, because ultimately we've all got his own opinion. Some people like overshotting, some people like ledgering, some people like to see a float, and some people like United. Anyhow.
Unfortunately, for my sins.
So one subject that I did see is about rivers and bankside management, things like that, and what's happening in the sort of natural world of fishing. And ultimately, I think if you asked a stranger what fishing was, they'd probably think about a river straight away, wouldn't they?
I think you're right, yeah.
Yeah, people don't walk around like little farm puddles or commercial fishers. They walk down the river, and that's what they say about fishing. So, what's people's views on that? What's niggling people?
It's very close to my heart, this, because obviously people talk about the close season, which I know we're going to talk about in another thing, but fundamentally, rivers are obviously managed by fishing clubs, fishing associations. Rarely are they day ticket, are they? They're not like no one's really commercialised river sections, have they? Maybe at Evesham. And then that's got the wooden platforms and good access and stuff like that. But on the whole, it's pretty much left to wild, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And access can be poor. But what I think, someone said, didn't they, that they weren't fishing rivers because they were like, they said something like they were appalled about the access and the state of the banks and stuff like that. And I think it's so difficult because I'm a member of a club, quite a few clubs, to do my river fishing. And these clubs, these river sections, are generally bailiffed and managed by a few volunteers, one or two. Like, how much work can these people actually do? And it's like, a flood comes and takes all their hard work away. Like, we did some work. I've actually got my hands dirty a little bit and done some like work on the river and stuff, which is great. I enjoy it.
No, well done.
And but a lot of that work's gone now. Less than a year later.
Yeah, especially on a river like the ones that you're fishing, which
flood and I think
the spate rivers, aren't they?
Yeah, I think it's so hard, isn't it? Because I'd love there to be lovely platforms and stuff and all that to do our kind of fishing.
Yeah.
But for my specimen fishing, as soon as I see a platform, I'm like, oh, I don't want to go there. Do you know what I mean? So it's it's not just float fishing on a river that you've got to consider. There's other styles, isn't there? And ultimately, it's really difficult, isn't it? It's really difficult to manage a river.
Yeah, I mean, I did see the comment that one person had mentioned that why aren't they doing all the bankside maintenance? And I kind of went away and I thought about it quite a bit.
Yeah.
And this is just my take on it. And I always try and I've realised I'm actually a person who tries to take a middle view.
Yeah.
And I don't know if what brings up, but anyway, so. Working parties came into my mind because that's a word. I think that's a modern word.
Yeah, working parties.
And obviously, I'm not that old, but when I was younger, there were no such thing as a working party because you didn't need one. Because people went fishing on the rivers.
They were on the banks every week.
The anglers maintained the banks, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because I can think of, and you've touched on it, but what I'm going to say is I can think of my past, and I've got photographs old, and all the pegs were clean, and the access to it, the path, and the nettles. There were certain sections between two fences, which are sometimes called pounds by people, but fields, and they'd be like the nettle field, and there'd be a path straight through the middle of it. Yeah. Where angler the day before, and the day before, and the day before, and the week before had worn it through, straight through the cornfield, great path down the middle, just like there is on our local footpath. Yeah. Where everybody walks, and round the summer holidays there's a path straight through the middle because people are walking through it. However, they got worse in lockdown, which proved more people were walking, which proves my point that anglers' feet, and you get your bank stick and you whack a few nettles and you fold the reeds back. And if you look at heavily fished waters, they don't need working parties.
No.
They only need them where people aren't going fishing. I tell you what's happening to bankside management. Anglers aren't.
They're not fishing, are they?
They're just not fishing. They're not trampling the grass down, which obviously is another debate. Too many anglers, and then the banks get worn, and all the rest of it. And people used to talk about bank erosion, especially like, let's say, the River Trent, where you could see where it's the peg, and it were worn because they moved the rocks to get the feet comfortable, or they used to put a pile of rocks and stick your bank stick in. So they did all the work, and I carry a little fold-up saw in my bag because I fish a few natural venues, and sometimes early season, you'd have to go and and that's just evoked a memory there. Early season on rivers like the Witham and the Welland, you took a weed rake.
Yes,
and your first job, you jumped in. You see anglers strip down to the underpants. They drop into the river and clean the weed, which sometimes could probably stretch. It seemed like miles at the time. It's probably about 8 metres. So they could clear a path through to pull the bream and net the bream. And every angler had a weed cutter in the box, in a little leather sheath. We still sell quite a few weed cutters, believe it or not. And I've got a weed cutter, and when we've been abroad, which are natural venues and nobody's been on them, a weed rake. Yeah. I remember Frankie snapping somebody's landing handle, clearing it, because he's obviously young and he's from Bradford. And that's what anglers did, and they had a roping back at Vanna, and they did it. So by the time you rocked up in July, there was like kind of weed growing, and then a path in front of your swim. It was the anglers that did it, and I think that's what's happening.
People aren't fishing rivers.
They're not fishing. How on earth, as you rightly said, could a club how could they employ or deploy, probably the right word, and finance or encourage people to clear swims for other people? Ultimately, if you're not paying day ticket money into that club, how have they got the resources to then be able to do that? And ultimately, it's ever decreasing circles. It's sort of perpetual motion, isn't it?
Yeah, unfortunately now, obviously with the brilliant commercial fisheries we've got, you know, it's all about convenience, isn't it? And the river that has fish, you know, there's beautiful paths down. There's even like it kills the weed off in the summer down to the swims and stuff. But it's just that one stretch because it's all Sam. I'll give him a shout out. The bailiff can manage it. That's the stretch that he can manage on his own and keep on top of.
Yeah.
And he kills all the weed and it's beautiful. We've been in the river cutting the weed to create ourselves some channels to fish.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that's us volunteering, doing it in our own time.
Of course.
And then other people obviously go and enjoy the river. But I think people have to get their hands dirty if they want to river fish now. Unfortunately, it might be down to you to do it.
Absolutely, and why wouldn't it be? You've got to put in to get back out, haven't you? And I'm just thinking about the why, where in the town there's some stages, but then I was thinking about wooden platforms, and the most significant one is when you go to Ireland, especially around Enniskillen. So the margins are really shallow, and there's lots of sort of reeds. And you can't get, you know, you'd have to cast 20 metres just to get to the water through a small channel that somebody would have cleared at some stage. And I'm sure they all stood in and kind of fished through the reeds, which we did in Denmark.
Yeah,
you know, we've done that. And so they built jetties. And up around Enniskillen, I was talking to a good friend of mine, actually, Jeff Margaret's, and his wife, Kath, who's been a bit poorly. Anyway, they're great people, and they've moved out to Kesh, and he was telling me about the anglers and the fact that they've got a great winter league there. And I was thinking, yeah, and it's only because of the efforts that were put in by the council probably a long time ago that have created that on the river. And ultimately, not a million miles upstream from where we are is the famous River Trent embankment, Victoria Bridge, I think it's called, the Victoria Embankment. Sorry, I'm a Yorkshireman.
So right in town.
I'm a Yorkshireman. I shouldn't actually know what it's called. Right in the centre of the city of Nottingham are concrete steps, as much as you can see. And I don't see anybody fishing there. Fishing's great.
No,
so is it bankside vegetation, or is it people just not going fishing on rivers?
Yeah, because like I say, I spend an unhealthy amount of time on the river, like in the evenings and stuff, and it's like rarely see anyone ever. And I'm talking year round. Even in the summer when I was fishing, rarely see a soul. And that's a relatively good access. You know, there's a good bit of parking. You've got a good walking. It's a popular club with 600-700 members. Never see a soul really, other than the few like of us that are in like a bit of a close knit group or whatever. Where's everyone going?
Well,
are they craving bits of river that have got little wooden platforms? I guess they probably are.
I'm not sure if a romantic view of what you would like, because there's needs and there's wants, isn't there?
There is.
And I'd love to do this and I'd love to do that. Well, there you go. So we've done some filming, the steak video, and we did the lobworm video as well on day ticket water on the famous River Trent at Burton Joyce, where the pegs are fairly worn. But some of them aren't worn, and depending if you've got the start of the season, they won't be worn. But they're worn at the minute because people keep trampling down. Me and you. And when we filmed, there was nobody there. However, I went between Christmas and New Year for a look, just for a walk, basically, and there were loads of people there. Every peg was filled.
That's great, isn't it?
So there are places that you can go on a day ticket, and people aren't doing it. There's lots and lots of accessible places you can fish on a river, and I just don't see the bodies. And I do believe people are going fishing, but I think it's fragmented.
Very much so, I think.
Massively fragmented, and that's a word that I'll always use around fishing in general, because people are talking about declining numbers, which we'll address. We'll talk about that.
Do you think we're spoilt, Mick, as anglers? I was listening. I was on a match yesterday, and I was listening to people. Bearing in mind it's January, it's been frozen over for a few weeks.
Not in here.
No, definitely not in here. It's been everywhere's been frozen, hasn't it, for a few weeks? We've had a horrible spell of high pressure. It's 2 degrees again today, and I heard I was next to someone who shall remain nameless who owns a fishery, and I could hear him on the phone to people, and they were moaning about there's no skimmers feeding, there's no perch feeding, there's no perch feeding, blah, 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 blah. And then I looked at the weights and I thought, well, this Sunday they've all caught £100 and there's been £100 weights and £80 weights. And then the silvers match, yeah, weights were down a bit, but there was still a lot of double figure weights and stuff like that. In January, when it's freezing, it's been frozen and the water's gone clear. Are we spoiled? Are we expecting too much?
Absolutely.
Have these weights been blown out of all proportion?
I catch myself doing that, and let's not get onto the commercial weight thing, because that's not the thing.
No, it's not that. It's that like a good day silverfish fishing for me is like, if you catch £10, that's a great day's fishing.
Funny, we both said £10 at the same time.
But people have like pushed onto this £30-40 of silvers thing because a few venues have had a really good like autumn or whatever, and that's now become the norm. When that isn't the norm, is it?
No.
In January.
No.
But people have got this skewed like.
We are spoiled, and we've escalated and elevated. I think that the bar's been raised, and ultimately, if you catch £10 of chunky little roach, you've had a great day's fishing. And I was talking match hours because it's 5 hours, so 5 hours fishing. And ordinarily, if I went pleasure fishing, I might stretch that to 7. Yeah. Not that I go pleasure fishing, but sometimes we go filming, and I don't want to pack up because I've not had my fill, because I've not concentrated on my fishing for 5 hours. So somewhere in there, it could be a 6, 7 hour day. You might stop for a sandwich, going round to talk to your mate, bit of sunbathing, whatever, snows on bank, away from kids. That's a great day spot, catching these fish. And it is the bar that's been lifted.
It is, isn't it?
Because
unrealistic expectations.
When I were a travelling salesman selling pegs, wooden peg, yeah, not fishing pegs. Lucky Heather. I used to visit a guy in Rotherham, actually, my hometown, called Dave Parks. Now Dave Parks, I think he's over 80 years old. You wouldn't think it, big strong fella he is. And he's a successful match angler, always has been. Still loves competing, still goes fishing. And he was from the old sort of brigade, and he got some great accolades, won loads of matches, and he had a gold medal, and it was made from gold, so it was a National Angling Championships gold medal. And he had this paper clipping that showed me where he'd won a match on the famous, and sorry if I keep quoting the trend, but it's central to where we are. And it's
fishing as well.
Well, it's also quite central to match fishing.
Yeah, it is massively.
And he'd won this, I think, I want to quote it as like a 200 peg, 180 pegs, could have been 220. And he was at Gunthorpe Bridge, and he won that with £2.14 of gudgeon in 1960 something. Might be 65, probably 68, 69. And that were 200, and of course, do you know what would have happened the week after? There'd have been another 200 people there. Yeah. Because that was the game, because it might have been a bit flooded, or there might have been a frost, the chub and roach weren't feeding, and he plugged away and caught, and he probably caught himself 30, 40 gudgeon.
Yeah, some small fish in the edge.
And I remember myself, Gunthorpe, getting in the frame where it was flooded, and fished a little feeder of like that, winkle pickers as they became at that time, and you'd fish for 3 or 4 bites in odd days. But you knew what to expect, and I think now that you've got the option, so the river's flooded, let's go to a pond, Will Freeman pond fishing. Where we didn't do that. And canal anglers, Dave Lloyd, friend of ours, fantastic, amazing angler, canal specialist. That's when he's at his best. And I saw him the other day on a post, and he got this tiny little landing net, which I thought he'd been chasing butterflies, because it was about that big, and it was solid.
Pole sock?
Yeah, he wore a pole sock, and it was solid with small fish. Yeah. And that, because he's like, it's going to be £6, and I'm going to catch myself 80 fish, and that's his guilty pleasure. Not everybody wants to catch a double figure X, Y, or Z, bream cap, tench, whatever it is that you're chasing, or big barbel. Some people want want bites. So ultimately, I think that's what's.
I just think that's what's changed. Spoiled now, aren't we, with what's available? And I think people have just lost themselves a bit, because people are moaning about fisheries. Oh, you need to put more fish in. You need to do this. You need to do that. Just have a look at the weather. Just look at what's been going on for the past 5 or 6 weeks. Yeah. And ask yourself, hang on a minute. Back in the day, I wouldn't have had a bite in these conditions. Absolutely. And now we're catching a respectable day. Having a good day's fishing still at the time of year. Managing expectations, I think that's a good one, isn't it? That's the key to that, isn't it? We were at Boddington yesterday, and there was a few blanks, 2 or 3 blanks, but when you look at this massive sheet of water with people 10 yards apart, it's amazing we catch anything.
Yeah, I know.
in January,
I know,
and yet we do.
I know. But we do catch fish,
Yeah.
and everybody catches fish, but we're not blown away by it because and I think the media.
We're probably to blame.
Yeah, because when we do go somewhere, I saw Andy Bennett had a massive net of perch.
Yeah.
Steve Winters won a round of teams of 4 at Allcroft with £55 of just about all perch. We didn't get a catch shot because he had to go on for his tea. Rush on for his tea. I think he must have been cooking it, but he said he would. And you know, I've seen massive nets of roach. I've seen some great big nets of chub off the Wye. And when we went to Springvale and we're filming and we're not really fishing, but we still fill a net with all these silverfish. And I think then when that's being pushed in front of you,
you think that's the norm.
You start to
It's like the
adapt it.
perch thing is a classic example, isn't it? Like he's caught £50 of perch, and you'd be going thinking, oh, there's a load of perch to catch. But that's a moment in time when it perch are very, very like they feed at a certain time of year when they're gathering to spawn. They may never show again. Now, until next winter.
Like that, bang. They
So
don't,
if you go
because they start
fishing for
spawning.
perch, they might not even be feeding.
Yeah, but because it's so heavily publicised, I think you start to
I'm going to catch £50 of perch.
ingest it, and it becomes there's perch everywhere. Every fish I go to, I'll catch a load of perch, and it doesn't
Doesn't work like that, does it?
No,
Unfortunately.
And it's interesting that you've just mentioned expectations, the diversification, the fragmentation of fishing. Where are they all going fishing if they're not going on these rivers to trample the banks down?
Yeah.
That kind of leads on to a big point that people have mentioned to us, which is declining numbers of anglers.
Declining numbers, yeah. Do you know what? It's a bit negative, isn't it?
It can be, yeah.
It's a bit negative to think about it. And I know you've got a great, you see it differently to a lot of other people, I think. I've never heard of anyone else suggest what you suggest about this. But it is a massive worry. There's some great kids fishing, don't get me wrong, and youngsters fishing and teenagers fishing and stuff, don't get me wrong. And there probably is more in carp fishing, I'd say. So they are coming through, but there's not enough, is there, to sustain this great sport?
No, and they talk about licence
problem,
sales. Yeah, they talk about licence sales that are dropping off, which I've got an opinion on that as well, which might as well say it. That I've had my licence checked. I think up until about 3 years ago, I'd had it checked 5 times in my life, right? And that's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. Considering
I've probably had it checked another 4 times. The amount of times we go filming, the amount of times I've been practicing, the amount of times I've been match fishing. It's a lot, you know. I've even worn 2 pairs of wellies out, rubbed the soles off one of them, and you just don't get checked. So I look at that and I go, right, how many people are actually buying a licence? There's where I live in Rotherham, and not so far away, I can just reach the tip of the gravel bar that starts at Retford and it finishes right at the other end, the other side of Doncaster, almost to Scunthorpe, which is round about somewhere Lindholm Lakes is. Great fishery.
Is that why there's so many fisheries on that little bit?
There's a gravel bar. If you look at a map, and it's I'm calling it a gravel bar. I'm talking about, and in between there's a million sandworks, gravel works.
A bit like where I live, the Nene Valley, same thing.
And I think the Angling Times once said there's 40 odd fisheries. I know about 4 of them. I know about Allcroft. There's one at the back of Allcroft, massive fishery, beautiful place. I've never been. It's over the
throw.
And there's Lodge Farm that I can think of, and there's one in between Lodge Farm and Bawtry that I can't remember the name of, and then there's 42 of them. There's hundreds of, there's all these fisheries, and I don't know what they are, right? So how many? I'm just talking about this little gravel belt. So there's all these little hideaways and fisheries where I'm convinced that licences aren't being checked. I tell you what, there's a massive trend for, because there's one, I've passed one this morning, little touring caravan sites with a pond in.
And there'll be 3 or 4 people fishing it every day.
I reckon that half the population of touring caravans have got a rester box shoved underneath there, and I know that because Pete, our friend, and that's what he does. He goes fishing, gets his rester box, and he fishes on these little ponds. Now Pete buys a licence, but the people that have an hour after the tea, before the barbecue starts, are they buying? I'm not accusing anybody.
Probably don't even know.
No, because they go, do I need to go fishing? Because you don't buy a licence from a tackle shop,
Right.
which I think were the first mistake.
Yeah, massive.
Because they were always the best educators to new anglers. I want to go fishing. Do I need a licence? Well, you need a rod licence. Then where you going to? Well, I'm going on Trent. Don't worry, somebody will come down and take £5 off you. Oh, I'm going to a pond. We're going in caravan. We're touring to West Yorkshire. We're going to a Pickering. It's a caravan site. It's a farm pond. Oh, well, I'll sort it out when he gets there. That guy who owns that caravan site isn't going to ask them to produce a rod licence.
He ain't bothered, is he?
So the year after, when they're booked for 6 weeks. So I'm not convinced because of, and I'm sorry,
the numbers aren't accurate.
I sound like I'm having a go at people fishing farm ponds. I'm not. What I'm saying is I don't get checked, and I worry that people don't feel the need for a licence. So licence numbers, are they relevant to the amount of anglers?
Yeah.
The other thing is, and you touched on this, where are they going fishing? We don't see them. We fished on here, on the Trent, there was nobody else there. Right. I went 1 month later, every single peg were took, and it were full of the carblers, the barbel anglers in bivvies, and there were a couple of blocks in between running a stick float down. And they're everywhere. Fishermen are
people are going fishing.
Fragmented.
Yeah.
They are going fishing.
They are going fishing.
Absolutely going fishing.
They are going fishing. That bit of the river I fished, there was I was speaking to Bailey from where I am last night, and he said, I think he said there was 8 there. And I know that's not a massive number, but that's 8 on one bit of river. Then you go up to another bit, there'll be another 8. And so that bit of river might have had 30, 40 anglers on yesterday.
Yeah.
There was 21 on our match sold out. There was other matches. You think, well, actually.
Yeah. They're out of sight, you see.
Yeah.
The anglers are out of sight. So on Saturday, we'd been out Thursday testing carbon blanks. I wanted
carbon products.
I went and had a second opinion. I went and fished on my own. My brother Darren came, and I went to Spring Vale. Freezing cold. I'm on about Baltic.
It's horrible. I bet it's
There were 6 matches on. There were a ton of pleasure anglers, and I went on Duchess, which is the first one, and I was there early. I think I was there just after 8, and I had to get in the second sort of bowl down there. And by the time I'd got ready, there were 6 anglers opposite me. It were packed.
In January.
But if you've never been there and you went to X, Y, or Z fishery near you or down the canal, there's nobody there. Well, there won't be. They're all there.
They're all there.
That's where they are. And so I think it's for fear of not being negative. I'm not having it that people aren't going fishing.
No, people are going fishing.
We know bait. We're quite in tune with a lot of bait companies.
Yeah.
And I spoke with one yesterday, and I spoke with a different one the week before, and it's like, yeah, we're selling tons of bait. It's great.
Yeah.
Maggot sales are down, but pellet sales are up. Nobody can measure the pellet sales.
No. And obviously
They're
you're not using
immeasurable.
as much bait, are you? So a pint of maggots does last longer this time of year as well. You're not buying 2 or 3 pints, are you? You're buying 1, and it's probably putting them back in the fridge.
Absolutely not.
But what about the issue of like kids fishing then, Mick? Because that is that ultimately, if we want the long-term success for this sport, we need more youngsters, don't we? And I know you've got a really interesting take on this.
Well, you started as a youngster, and I started as a youngster.
Yep.
And I'm pretty certain that I know how you started. Your dad took you fishing.
Yep.
Your granddad went fishing.
Yep.
My dad took me fishing.
Yep.
And when he didn't take me, my granddad took me. And when they didn't take me, Roy Truman took me.
And I take my kids fishing.
Absolutely. Both granddads took me. One of them didn't fish and he still took me. And my opinion is everybody's completely obsessed. And the first person that commented on our video was, what are you going to do about taking young ones fishing? And trust me, I want to do more, get more people into fishing.
We need
because that's what we do for a living. We sell fishing tackle.
We need it.
But I think we're barking up the completely wrong tree. It's not the young ones we need to get fishing. It's the adults that we need to get fishing. That's who needs to go fishing. Because kids in 2025, little Johnny is not jumping on his pushback with his 3-piece rod in a cloth bag tied to his crossbar with a bit of string and a rucksack on his back and pedalling through the middle of your nearest town to go onto the farm pond. It's not happening because you don't let your kids out like that. That's not what happens. You don't let your grandkids go out. They won't even let them walk to school.
No.
So they're not pedalling. It's a different world that we live in. So we've got to get the adults fishing. That's my opinion. And the person who planted that seed in my mind was my dad. Because when we were sat round having a conversation, I think we were away on international duty, and the conversation came up, and he hit the nail straight on the head.
Yeah.
Bullseye. He went, listen, let me tell you why he goes fishing. And I was like, this must be interesting.
Here we go.
And
Go on, Ernie.
he said, it's quite simple. He said, Sunday comes round, I've been working, I've been on shifts, Dad were a mechanic, and I want to go fishing. I want to get out some fresh air, want to go fishing. So we've got my sister, me, and Darren probably weren't even around at the time, or there or thereabouts. And he's gone, you've got a choice. You can go shopping with your mum, or you can come fishing with me. So of course I'm back at car before he's even got rods in. I'm sat there, I'm not going shopping. I'm like, on Sunday you might have had to go to church, which lasted till over about 10. And so you went fishing. You took the kids along with you, whatever you were doing, because you've got 2 kids, and they need to be accompanied, don't they?
Yeah, they do, yeah.
And
I wouldn't dream of letting them.
we've got some beautiful, I don't know what they're called, beef eaters and sizzlers and hobby horse pubs, and that everybody's in there on a Sunday. They get up at 10 o'clock, they mill around watching CBBS or whatever it is that they do. All these programmes might be 20 years out of date, but it's just what's in my mind. Yeah. And then about 1 o'clock, they rock down to Carvery, back at 3, back in pyjamas, sit there waiting for money to come. That seems to be society these days.
It's a big thing.
Whereas I think when there were only 4 channels on telly, because it was council telly, you didn't have it beaming through a big dish, dustbin lid on the side of your house.
Options were limited.
It were rubbish.
It was crap, yeah.
It were rubbish. It didn't start. You'd have to listen to some nonsense like Sunday morning debate or songs of praise or all that carry on. You couldn't wait to get out of the house. Up at the crack of dawn, gear in, car, felt Mr. Smith's off, Mrs. Smith's great, he's gone, I can hoover up without him moaning about noise and all the rest of it. And I think society's changed. So if we could just get the guys fishing.
Because there must be such a lapse, there must have been, like my era, and maybe just a bit older than me, there must have been such a, like, people who fished like I did from a young age to sort of teenagers, maybe early mid-20s, then they had kids and stuff, then they just fell off, didn't go. There must be such a lapsed amount of anglers in that little, from 25 to 45.
Well, I'm just going to put a look.
And whether they pick it up in their 40s,
well,
is another thing. That's what.
And
it happened in COVID, didn't it? We got this load of anglers again.
So if we did a graph, which I'm sure somebody could do, I'm not going to do it. If you look at the amount of young uns coming in, and bless them, all the anglers that aren't with us anymore, falling off at the back end, I think by now there shouldn't be any anglers left. Because the influx of anglers, there's not been many young uns come in.
Not enough.
Behind me, if you like. Yeah. So with the amount of people that passed away that I know, from fishermen, because time's caught up with them, that means there shouldn't be anybody left. So who are the people that are replenishing the stocks of anglers? Well, I'll tell you who they are. They're the people that you've mentioned. And when I spent my time leaning on shop counters, begging for an order, waiting for him to finish talking about somebody's dog and
shotting patterns.
Oh, absolutely. Ken Dog's dad's dead. They'd come in and they were, I've just retired, or kids have just left to them, or something had changed in their lives.
And they've got a little bit more time.
I used to go fishing, pal, but I haven't been fishing for years. The amount of people I used to hear, and I'm talking recently, because in the last 10 years, I'd come into a fishing tackle shop and go, I need a licence, pal, because we touched on this earlier. I need a licence. And bloke would laugh, he's gone, we've not sold licence for 18 years. Well, I've not been fishing for 20. Yeah. Returning anglers.
Returning anglers is the key, isn't it?
I don't think men who set up home have 2 kids, I think the fall-off rate, the retention rate, has always been quite low. You reach an age, they used to say you'll either find Highland women, and then next thing you've got a mortgage wrapped around your neck and you're not going fishing. And that's what used to happen. And they'd disappear for a bit, but then they'd realise that nappies stink and ears getting chewed up, and they'd come back to fishing. And some didn't come back for a long time, but as soon as they retired, that's what they do. So I think we need to encourage older people, people of adult age, men and women, with children. Ian Day from Sarno said to me the other day, he thinks that the campaign should be around mothers. Why is that? Well, they said because they are the decision makers. When clearly, from what we've just been saying, they obviously are.
Yeah.
And if they could see that fishing was not smelly, not dirty, quite good fun, quite exciting, they'd then want their kids to go.
Because I say this quite a lot to anyone I've spoken to about this subject. Like, I take my kids and my wife comes and my mother-in-law comes and my father-in-law comes because they love it. And every time we go, we have a great time. We catch a few fish, we'll probably grab a bite to eat, have a little picnic and that. And it's brilliant, everyone loves it. There's no situation where I've ever taken my kids fishing where they've not enjoyed it. And I've found that every time I've taken a young person fishing, like Evie's friends have taken them fishing and stuff like that, because they want to come and see what it's all about, they all enjoy it.
Would they have gone if you've not taken them?
No, that's what I mean. Like, but they enjoy it. So it's not the fishing. The fishing's not the problem. It's actually giving them access to go, isn't it?
Yeah.
And having the people, the adults, to take them. That's the problem.
And if you, as obviously an amazing angler that you are, with some kit, you can take little Jenny or Bruschetta or whatever they call them these days, Brittany. You take her, you put a sizable hook on, you know exactly what to do. She catches a fish and they get the bug, don't they?
Yeah.
So you need an angling adult to get the kids fishing. Because if you're an adult and you're driving your kid to, and it's very admirable, Guru, the Talent Pathway,
fantastic.
Canal on the River Trust are doing something, and it's all based around the kids. And I've watched on, and I had one guy, I think it was a fisher, it might have been Lindholm, I'm not sure, I can't remember. And they'd said that they'd run a junior day, and what they'd finished up with it was they were unpaid babysitters. So these adults just drove the kids there who weren't interested in fishing, dropped them off for the day, and come back, picked them up at 3 o'clock. However, if your Uncle Fred takes you fishing, all right, you're going to be moaning and groaning because you're bored and all the rest of it, but the chances are that once you've been, you're going to do that. So I've been racking my brains, and I will try and make some sensible suggestions, because of course we can all have opinions, and I always say, don't give me problems, give me solutions. And I ain't got the solution yet, so I'm not trying to cause the problem, but somebody raised it about the declining numbers, and I think there must be a way, and I'd love to join forces with anybody else, if we can have a thinking tank, about suggestions to get adults fishing.
I saw. Sorry to put in there.
No.
I saw the other year.
You need to.
I took Lytton's. There's a nice park in Northampton. The river runs right through it, and there was blue flags. The Canal and River Trust blue flags in the car park, and I was like, oh, what's this? And I went down, and Coach Sue, who is an absolute legend in Northampton sort of area, she's in the Northampton club. She does all the junior teaching. She's won awards. Fanatical about getting young anglers fishing. Does a wonderful job, along with the other team there. And she was there, and she'd got a few different poles set up, and it was one of these things, because it's such a busy park that there's people coming and going all the time. She just literally got some fishing kit, sat on the river, and you just went up and you could have a go.
Brilliant.
Right, and I was watching, and it was all mums, because obviously they're the ones in the park, and they were taking their kid down, and they only had to fish for 10 minutes if they wanted. They could fish a bit longer, but it was like a 10-minute thing. And I just stood there, watched from afar. I didn't go and talk to her or anything. I thought, I'm going to see what's happening. And it was non-stop all day. And I thought,
brilliant.
Even if a percentage of them take, like the seeds, just that little spark. And I thought, that is such a brilliant idea.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
And I thought, you could do it on the Nottingham Embankment. I'm sure they probably do, and I've not seen it. But I thought, that was a brilliant idea. So that's off to that one.
There's some great efforts out there.
Yeah. And a lot of it is unseen, isn't it? Unseen. We don't see it because we're not in that.
No, that's right. That's right. We don't.
So there are some good things.
No, because we're busy doing what we're doing, which is a great point. I think somebody said, I remember once being in a meeting with a high-profile national fishing tackle retailer, and their commercial manager said to me, and I was with Preston at the time, what are you doing? What are you doing about young anglers? Yeah. And the answer at the time was that, I tell you what we're currently doing, we're currently working hard to maintain the business, to make sure we stay alive, because things were a little bit tough. The game was declining, and everything wasn't on an even keel. And I kind of felt the person who asked us on our podcast video was, are Nufish going to do anything? Well, at this moment in time, we're absolutely stretched to the hilt. Yep. It's not an excuse. We haven't got, well, I spoke to you this morning, I've been at it since 5 this morning, I'll be at it more midnight tonight. We haven't got any spare bodies. And if it wasn't for volunteers, people will give up their Saturdays and Sundays. And as match anglers, we're really selfish. And you don't get to be you know, successful in fishing unless you're very selfish.
you need to give
And I
it
don't
your
mean
own
just
time.
successful as matching. I mean accomplished pleasure angler. You need time and accomplished pleasure angler. You need time, and often fishing is a time for your personal relaxation. It's very good for the mental health. It's very good for your well-being. So people don't volunteer the time. There have been some great people. Dennis White used to.
Yeah, I remember when I used to fish in the juniors. He'd be there.
Fleets down an evening. I mean, he always had aftershave on, just in case, you know, they're wearing him. Sort of
Ulterior motives, are you going to call it?
No, fair play to him. And so we need. For me, it's not a realistic option, because if it was, it would be working very successfully, and I don't see it working very successfully. And then, from a commercial point of view, I've seen some brands are running some really high sort of profile kids, encouraging them to become successful, which is great. But that's not encouraging people to start fishing.
Yeah, they're already at the good level, aren't they? And that's brilliant for bringing them through.
Almost pushing them into elitism. This is a high level mainstream program where we're trying to pick. It's a bit like scouting at football, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
It's Man United
Exactly.
going round and they're picking off the best and creating this sort of elite. But who's doing it at the ground rules? If Bob from the Wickerman's Club is not running Sunday League football with the 10 pitchers, the scout from Man United ain't going to have anywhere to go. So we do need that. But I still maintain adults first, then the kids will follow. That's what I believe. So I'm going to put more thought into it, and I'd be interested to see what other people think on that
Let us know
subject.
on your suggestions, what you would do to help get more bums on seats, isn't it, at the end of the day?
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, that's enough of putting the world to rights
Say
and
top
being
up.
all political. Fresh brew, and onto the real sort of subject that we really love, which is fishing. One of the comments I noticed was, does bait make a difference? Additives, brands, type of bait, does it really matter? What we're saying, Joe?
Yeah, I think it does. But that's a massive subject, isn't it? I could talk for hours on this. It's a massive subject.
There's not enough filming camera, is it?
Obviously, with ground baits, you've got a million different textures, you've got different binding potential, you've got different ingredients, you've got different colours, different smells, different. It's the world's your oyster. And I know certain people will be like, "Oh, additives don't work," or "It's all nonsense." And you might even be in that camp. But I know for a fact that you love your little bottle of stuff that you put in your skimmer ground bait, and you like a little bit of sweetener, and you like certain ground baits. So even like yourself, who's probably quite sceptical about all that, you still have your little things that you like to put in it, don't you?
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in flavours and additives and stuff, and good quality bait I think is the biggest one. I think that is ultimately the biggest.
That's interesting.
Biggest point, I think.
Are you talking live bait? Or are you talking
Both. I think your maggots and your casters need to be spot on. There's obviously times and a place where old bait works great.
But you're on about ingredients.
I'm on about ingredients.
Ground bait.
I think your ground bait, if you can use the best you can get, I think big. Liquid additives. A lot of them are just like flavours in a bottle, aren't they? They're like with a cheap carrier and a bit of a flavour. But when you get a good one, you know exactly what I mean. It's like a thick, viscous, like taste it, and there's food in there, and I think all that stuff's great. So yeah, I think there's a massive subject. Isn't it?
Because you're really big. Obviously, we've spent quite a bit of time together over the last couple of years, and you're massive on not. Additives is a strange word. I think additives is a word that the market uses.
Yeah.
Ingredients is the word that we should talk about.
Yeah.
You're a massive ingredient man, in my opinion.
Yeah.
One of the first things that sticks in my mind is for your big fish fishing, and it will liver.
Liver, yeah.
Liver liquid. I don't. Is that the right word?
Liver,
liquid.
yeah. Hydrolyzed
Liquid
liver.
liver.
Hydrolyzed liver, yeah.
Try saying that when you've had 10 pints.
It's brilliant stuff. Like it's proven in fish farms to stimulate feeding. It's full of vitamins and minerals, which obviously keep things healthy. And it's a natural ingredient that you can't overdo. It's good. It's genuinely good.
And when you say hydrolyzed, that means that's actually
Been broken down, yeah.
Yeah, liquefied,
yeah,
sort of thing.
Basically, yeah.
And because it's liquefied, real liquefied liver, not liver flavoured water.
Water. That's the difference.
Coloured in a brown with a brown oxo cube.
Yeah. You've all seen the bottles in shops, you know, it'll have something on it, a strawberry on it.
The vape liquids.
Yeah, they are, aren't they, essentially? Just carriers, flavour carriers, and I'm sure they catch fish, but I'm interested in like your livers, your garlics, your milk proteins, which is a big one for, probably not match fishing, but for my specimen fishing.
Salt?
Salt, yeah, salt's a big one. And yeast is a big one.
Really?
Things like Marmite, yes, things like Marmite and stuff is a big one.
Somebody mentioned the yeast in bread because we said we left everybody last time saying bread is the best bait on the planet, and one guy went, well, it will be. It's got yeast in it.
Yeah, and
yeast.
Yeast in it, and ultimately, it's I think match fishing such a short time span to be on the bank, isn't it? So you probably don't get the full effect of it all really, because ultimately the draw makes a big difference, the windward direction makes a big difference. You can't catch what's not in front of you, can you?
No.
But I do think there's things that help you get more bites, and like I say with ground bait and stuff, good quality ingredients I believe make a big difference. You know, good pellets in the ground bait. Like we know we get different batches of ground bait, and we'll get a batch and we're like, yeah, that's the one. And then you get another batch and you go, not so sure.
Because the ingredients might have, because of course fishing is a small industry and not every manufacturer has got full control and autonomy over what, you know, so if they buy 20 tonne of medium strength fish meal pellets, let's say, to use as a base mix for a ground bait, I remember a guy telling me once, obviously he was a manager of a big bait company, he said, so we might order high oil, you know, 80% oil fish pellets that we're going to grind up and turn into ground bait. Depending on what the trawlers have caught, which could be anchovies or it could be sardines, because both are high oil, they would then use them to make the fish meal based at the pellet company. And when I say pellets, don't always think about the pellets that you buy in a bag, fishing pellets. I'm talking about sort of pellets to use as a base mix that they grind up, which ordinarily are slightly bigger and easier to grind. The ingredients that go in them, it's out of control. So you get two different textures. So all of a sudden then, if that's the main ingredient, that you've got a recipe for a cake, it's self-raising flour, it's eggs, it's water, and whatever else it is that your Auntie Barbara puts when she makes you a cake. If you change the ingredients, it's going to be different, isn't it? If if your flour's made from corn and not from wheat, because that's all they had to make the flour, you're going to what's up with that cake? Well, it's not good because it don't taste like cake. It tastes like corn flour cake or whatever it is that they eat in America. And so, massive thing, ingredients.
Ingredients is massive. Quality ingredients. And even like with the flavours and additives and stuff like that, there's a big trend at Barston at the moment, not so much in the winter but in the summer, of people dipping their PVA bags in the liquid. And it is literally cut and dry that if you're using the right one, they're getting more bites. The same people are winning every time. And I speak to Steve Ringer an awful lot, and he was doing it for the UK champs. And he went on and won his section, absolutely dominated his area. And he says he went in practice, and when he didn't have that dip on, didn't catch, put that dip on and you're catching, and it's water goes green. You've experienced it in South Africa.
Absolutely, yeah. That was the real in at the deep end.
Yeah, that green stuff that they all use.
Yeah.
And it makes a difference. And over my specimen fishing, because it's a campaign, you do see it working over a longer time. And I think match fishing probably isn't maybe not the correct.
Yeah, you don't get enough opportunities and repetitive. Because if you went 365 days to the same peg on the same fishery, despite the season, you would see a pattern if you use it or not used it. But the randomness and the spasmodic nature of match fishing means that there weren't any fish in front of you that day, and it don't matter what you've got. Trust me, there's no fish in front of you. Don't matter what you've used, because you've got the magic mix that you use, and then you've got the whatever it is left in the back of your bottom of your bag, and you use that. But if that was a great peg and that was a bad peg, and you did that, so nobody can actually follow it. And I think it's not an exact science. No. That's the problem with do baits actually work? Is it's not a scientific test, is it?
It's really difficult
because some days are never the same.
I got like when sometimes you're like, oh, maybe there is something in that. And there's this like amino thing that's been going around at the minute, and a few people have been using it at Bollington, catching really well, and I'm like, someone else who I really respected was using it, and I'm like, it's worth a go. Ended up spending 30 quid on this bottle of stuff, not had a bite using it yet. It's like,
you try putting it in your tea.
It's like one of them, and it's like, oh god. But probably the sample size is just, I've just probably not been on any fish. And I remember something that, it was Lee actually, because I know Lee was big into this for a spell. I think you fished the World Champs in France, didn't you?
Yes.
And you came back, and the people who'd done really well had Groundbait that was like sickly sweet, wasn't it?
Oh, you could taste it like a cake, well, like eating cake. I mean, it's a great story. Lee Kerry, he and I were travelling together. We got back to the van. We'd been absolutely battered, the pair of us, embarrassingly.
And this is in a World Champs.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Highest level.
And of course, when you're fishing together as a group of people, you're all doing it wrong, but there's no comparison. It's hard to measure it. Tommy always used to be concerned about the end guy. So if you beat the guy, if you were on the end and you were next to Johnny Foreigner, and he's smashed you up, they want to know what Groundbait is. So if we've got the mix, we're going to put it on the two ends, see if we can beat the two guys next to us. Is our bait more powerful and more attractive than them two? But then on the day of the race, you're all scattered across the 5 sections. Then you really know. And this particular match, we've got back in and Lee's gone. I've been outside I think it was Peter Backo, who will become a legendary angler, but so is Lee. And he's gone. He's had this stuff and it's Groundbait. And I said, I'll stop you there. I were outside of Matty Sivac, same team as it happened. Who I respect immensely, great guy, massive adversary of mine. We've had some great battles together, and it were ridiculous. It just embarrassing. I'm on the end peg downstream, bear in mind. It's best peg on March. Can't catch out because I just don't think I was attracting the fish. Or more importantly, he was attracting them over the top of me. That's what I believe.
They were going past you to get to him.
So shouts time, and apparently Lee's done that, and I've done the same thing. Put his rods down, gone to the tape. We know him, and I've gone with my bucket, and I've gone here, and we've like both put his hands in, and I've gone like that, and it were like eating Black Forest Gatto, and he's gone like that, and gone
just like
with some nonsense, and he went, "What is this? Is it dirt from the ground? It's tasteless." And I was like, "Yeah, I know." Yeah. And their Groundbait was really wholesome, cake-like, food-like, foodie, and that's become the term, foodie. So, because remember this, and this is my opinion about the whole thing about fishing is, you don't catch a fish unless it swallows your hook. On your hook is bait, which means unless a fish is feeding, you don't catch one by accident unless you foul hook it by accident. You don't catch a fish unless it opens its mouth and swallows something. Therefore, is bait important? It's paramount.
Paramount, yeah.
It's everything. So the correct bait on the correct day for the correct fish at the correct time, depending where you are and what time of year it is, which is why the data just explodes, and you might as well ask me what the answer to the universe is, because there is no straight cut and dried answer. But here's my theory on it. Your ingredients and you follow that. I'm like, feeding is everything. Getting it right, how you feed. Not necessarily whether it was red maggot or a yellow maggot or a red maggot, but the fact that you feed 2 pints in a match or 6 pints in a match, or you feed and then don't feed, the way you pack your method feeder, for instance, the way that you rattle 3 pellets in instead of 20 every 5 minutes, you're putting 3 in every 30 seconds. That, I believe, is mega. Once you've perfected that, then you can start comparing the ingredients. Now, you're a brilliant angler, and a lot of our friends are brilliant anglers, and I think when you get to a level, then you can start seeing the difference more so. But most people just want to go fishing. Here's my sort of take on it. Confidence is more important than anything. And when I chuck out, for instance, with red worms on, first job is, are they still on my hook? So you need to hook them right. Have they folded over the hook? And I'm using these as a really daft example. I don't want to sit there wait for a bite if my bait's not right. So getting the bait right for you and the type of fishing that you're doing, is really important. Dave Harrell rang me to talk to me about the steak video. He sent me some lovely floats to do a better job, so I didn't have that big float wobbling about in the boils. And he said that they use meat, luncheon meat a lot, tinned meat, and they cube it up and they put it in the mix and they feed it on the Wye and the Warwickshire, the River Severn. And of course, what I was saying is that the steak that we used is a great hook bait, because when you strike, if you miss the bite, you can let it run again. You strike like that with a piece of luncheon meat on, it comes off. I know I'm simplifying things, and we're not talking about ingredients, but what I'm saying is that you've got to be able to fish.
Yep.
And is my bait staying on the feeder because my ingredients are right? Yes. Is my hook bait buoyant, not buoyant? Get the fundamentals right, get the fish feeding, and then you'll sort of see the subtleties, because we could go into the fish meal debate.
There's one of them for every ingredient in there.
There's fish meals, a kilo of ground bait from A to Z, and A being, there's a spoonful of fish meal in that one, and there's 20 spoonfuls, in fact that's pure fish meal, and there's a scale. So find out what's right, select that, because we can't say this one is, I'm a big Sonu fan, but I've used products from Champion Feed, I've used Census products, a whole mixture of products. Van der Nijnd, fantastic ground bait. We use
trying to pick the right ones for the right job
is really important. So there isn't an exact science. But what I think we do sometimes, especially with our films, is it's quite clear that we're not trying to sell bait. We're doing fishing videos, and this is what we use, and we use that to good effect. So ultimately, it's not. I don't think there's a magic solution, but what you do say is if you use this bait in this way, you catch fish. Your paste is a perfect example. Give those ingredients to me, I'm going to catch out because I don't know how to do it.
So just so the guys and girls can take something away from this little chapter, I'm going to call it a chapter. What is the one thing that you've used that has genuinely made a difference to your fishing? It could be a favourite ground bait mix, it could be a
strong fish meal.
Strong fish meal?
Yeah.
As in 50-50?
So my particular one is Sonobait's 50-50, the green one. I think they might have launched one since Marine that's equally strong, but that was by far their strongest one.
Yeah, it was a big step up, wasn't it?
And the day, the dawning moment, the time that the hammer fell was, we're in Belgium, we're fishing, and it were a rowing course. There were about 15 of us all lined up, international teams, 3 teams of 5. Tommy got it all arranged. And your mate Alex Bones and Kieran Rich, I believe, had got some super strong fish meal and some brown crumb, I think, because brown crumb was soft and they wanted it to fluff. And I got a nice, beautiful, sexy mix that clouded up, and it kind of worked, and we caught fish on it. But then we were all lined up, and I think Darren Cox were also got the same mix, and it was just like a practice day. And Tommy's company's gone, you seen them 3, one down there, one up there, and one at the top. He said they've all caught fish. He went, they've got this strong fish meal in the ground bait. I mean, he went, it's horrific. Have you got it all? I went up to the van, and Ian Day from Sono had given me a pot of ingredient, something he puts in the mix, and I think it's called EP.02 or something. It's like the world's most expensive, like 20 quid for a tub that big. Gone like that, sprinkled a bit in my existing ground bait, gone like that. I caught 5 bream. People inside me didn't catch one because I pulled them, and it were quite clear, and off we went. And from that moment on, I've been very conscious about the strength of fish meal.
That's something you always talk about when we go out.
Yeah.
The strength of fish meal, don't you?
Massive. It's absolutely massive. The second time, and what drove the nail home, I were at Southfield and I were catching skimmers. It fished really well. It's a few years back. I know outside a guy called John Deakin, and he were catching brown, sort of bigger skimmers, and I'm catching small skimmers. We're catching, and I were doing really well in this festival, and I'm thinking, why is he catching bigger fish than me? And I think you could use pellets then, and I could clearly see his ground bait were quite coarse. So I've gone into my bag, got my pot of, well, it were actually a bag of 50-50 because I'd moved on from the pot of thing. I didn't need it.
Secret powder.
It were already ready in a bowl of ground bait. I've gone like that, chucked my mix away, knocked a bit up, chucked it in, overtook him, and won the day. 40 pound of proper fish, and I've never looked back. That's massive. It makes a massive difference.
Massive difference.
Bit like young people like sweet drinks, old men like whiskey.
Yeah.
And I think it's something to do with that. That's what I believe.
Yeah,
What about you?
I think that, because that's actually, I've listened to a lot of like podcasts and stuff, and I think that has actually been scientifically proven that the older the fish get, their taste buds do change. Different receptors actually activate the older the fish get. So what a 50-pound carp that's 30 years old definitely likes different things to them young bucks.
Yeah.
Definitely, it's proven.
And what about you? What changed yours?
What changed mine? Pellets. Without a doubt, various styles. I think when we first got really good expander pellets, it was a game changer, an absolute game changer.
Expander pellets,
really good expander.
Lethal bit.
The old golden ones with the little yellow flecks on. People who've done a lot of expander. When we had them, when I was like a teenager, early 20s, it was just like a.
So is that a fish meal thing or a consistency thing, or?
I think that was a bit of everything. I think it was obviously the right ingredients. I think the texture was perfect, the colour was right, everything was right, and they've never been recreated, sadly.
Texture so you can keep them on the hook.
Yeah, keep them on the hook. And I'll tell you one thing that actually, now you should say that, is quite interesting. Our expanders used to fall off a lot when we were fishing. And this sounds like a silly thing to say, but you caught loads of fish. Nowadays, pellets, they're really good, aren't they? They don't come off.
Yeah,
you don't catch as many fish on expanders. Yeah, you don't catch as many fish on expanders now as you did back then. So whether it was the bait was softer and actually they could eat it, and whereas now, if you bump a fish, your pellet stays on, as if they're too dense. And whether that's something that's maybe, I've only just actually thought about that. But your pellets used to come off back then.
Slow sinking
expander was a
which
big
is
one.
not very dense, that your hook pulls out of, is, well, we'll be coming up to spring soon, won't we? So maybe we can do a video on expanders.
And then probably more, because that was obviously a long time ago, I think the more recent one is the wheat gluten in my paste. Adding that. Massive edge.
Yeah.
Massive
Complete
edge.
opposite. You wanted it to stay on. That helps your paste stay on.
Massive edge. That has been a game changer for me since I started doing that.
That's fantastic.
Caught so many fish.
And for anybody that's not seen that, just check out everything you need to know about paste fishing, where Joe teaches me like an absolute cloth head and shows me everything that you need to know. And I learned some stuff that day. And I still couldn't get it quite right once you'd shown me, because that practice makes perfect. But that's brilliant. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, nice little bit of fishing.
What's your favourite bait? What is it? Tell us your additives. We want to know.
I'm sure they will.
Oh, they won't, because they don't want anyone to know.
Yeah, well, trust me, I know for a fact that that's exactly what Joe thinks. Pellets, expander pellets, and mine is the strong fish meal thing. That's the key thing, because we're here to obviously share our thoughts and feelings, and we'll do that on the very next episode, which will be coming to your screen soon. And thanks once again for tuning in. Please leave us your comments. Please tell us whether you like this or not. Thumbs up or thumbs down, choice is yours. But either way, let's have a subscription. And thanks for tuning in once again. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks, everyone.